Hollywood actresses who had biggest busts. Hollywood didn't just create stars, it decided who was allowed to be desired and who had to be controlled. While curves were celebrated on some bodies, they were questioned, restricted, or quietly ignored on others. The women in this story didn't just challenge beauty standards, they exposed the rules behind them. At Legends of Black Excellence, we look past the glamour to examine power access and the cost of being visible in an industry built on contradiction. If you're ready to question what Hollywood praised and what it feared, subscribe, stay with us, and join the conversation that refuses to fade quietly into history. Pam Grier. Pam Grier rose to prominence in the early 1970s as a figure Hollywood could neither ignore nor comfortably control. Her public image was bold, physical, and unapologetically commanding. With a curvaceous athletic build and a striking presence, Grier became the face of a new kind of leading woman in films like Coffee 1973 and Foxy Brown 1974. Unlike earlier actresses whose success relied on suggestion or restraint, Grier's appeal was direct and powerful. She was marketed as tough, desirable, and fearless, an image that resonated strongly with audiences during a period of cultural and political upheaval. That visibility, however, came with built-in limitations. While Grier's body and confidence were central to her popularity, Hollywood quickly confined her to the blaxploitation genre, treating her success as situational rather than transferable. Studios profited from her image, but hesitated to imagine her beyond revenge-driven narratives and action-heavy roles. Despite her clear screen authority, she was rarely offered mainstream projects that allowed for emotional complexity or long-term character development. As the blaxploitation era faded in the late 1970s, the consequences became clear. Roles diminished, and Grier faced the familiar industry pattern of abandonment once a trend passed. She endured serious personal challenges during this period, including health struggles and professional uncertainty, yet remained resilient. In the 1990s, a renewed wave of appreciation, most notably through Jackie Brown 1997, reintroduced her to new audiences and affirmed what had long been evident: her talent extended far beyond the labels placed on her early career. Pam Grier's impact on Hollywood is both visible and structural. She redefined what a leading woman could look like, embodying physical confidence without apology and agency without permission. Her legacy lies in breaking a mold that had never been designed to include women like her in positions of power. Today, Grier is recognized not only as an icon of a specific era, but as a trailblazer whose influence reshaped representation and expanded the vocabulary of female strength on screen. Her career stands as a reminder that visibility can be revolutionary and that endurance often matters just as much as arrival. Dorothy Dandridge. Dorothy Dandridge emerged in the 1940s and 1950s as a striking contradiction within Hollywood's rigid system. She was undeniably glamorous, with a curvaceous figure that aligned with the era's celebrated ideals, yet she was presented to the public as something carefully controlled and cautiously framed. Her breakthrough came with Carmen Jones, 1954, where her beauty, elegance, and screen presence made her the first black woman nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actress. To audiences, Dandridge appeared to embody Success magazine covers, leading roles, and the promise that Hollywood was finally opening its doors. Behind that image, however, was a career defined by limitation rather than freedom. Despite her looks and talent, Dandridge was offered far fewer roles than her white contemporaries, and many came with moral restrictions imposed by studios fearful of interracial controversy. Her body and allure were visible, but never allowed to be fully celebrated or marketed in the same way as other actresses of the time. She was often told she was too glamorous for roles written for black women, yet too risky to be placed opposite white male leads. How can someone be considered a star, yet denied the right to fully exist as one? As opportunities narrowed, the personal cost became severe. Dandridge faced financial instability, industry rejection, and intense scrutiny of her private life. A highly publicized relationship with director Otto Preminger, combined with the pressure of being labeled a symbol without protection, left her vulnerable in an unforgiving system. By the early 1960s, her film career had slowed dramatically, and she struggled to regain momentum in an industry that had moved on without her. The impact of Dorothy Dandridge's life extends far beyond her filmography. She stands as a pivotal figure who exposed Hollywood's contradictions, willing to profit from Black beauty, but unwilling to support Black women as complete artists. Her legacy reshaped conversations about representation, access, and the cost of being first. Today, she is remembered not only for what she achieved, but for what she was never allowed to become, leaving behind a question that still resonates across generations of performers. Eartha Kitt. Eartha Kitt entered American popular culture as something entirely her own. In the 1950s, her image was striking and unmistakable, a slim yet powerfully sensual figure. Sharp cheekbones and a voice that could purr, tease, or command with equal authority. To the public, Kitt represented an exotic sophistication that Hollywood rarely knew how to categorize. Her success spanned music, film, and stage, with performances in cabarets, Broadway, and international venues that made her one of the most recognizable entertainers of her era. Unlike many actresses whose appeal was shaped by studios, Kitt projected a self-authored confidence that audiences could feel instantly. That independence, however, became the source of her greatest conflict. Hollywood was comfortable benefiting from her sexuality, but deeply uncomfortable with her autonomy. Kitt's refusal to soften her persona or conform to submissive expectations set her apart in an industry built on control. She spoke multiple languages, toured globally, and rejected the idea that she owed anyone gratitude for her success. When she openly criticized U.S. foreign policy at a White House luncheon in 1968, the consequences were swift and brutal. Her career in America was effectively derailed, contracts disappeared, and doors closed without explanation. The aftermath forced Kitt into an unexpected exile. She rebuilt her career overseas, particularly in Europe, where audiences embraced her artistry without demanding silence or obedience. While American media attempted to reduce her to scandal, she continued to perform record and evolve. Roles came sporadically in the United States, often years later, but never with the institutional support she once had. Yet Kitt endured, sustaining a career that stretched across decades through resilience rather than approval. Eartha Kitt's legacy is defined not by numbers, roles, or controversies, but by authorship. She demonstrated that sensuality could coexist with intellect and that beauty did not require permission. Her life exposed how quickly admiration turns to punishment when power shifts away from institutions. Today, she is remembered as a woman who refused to negotiate her identity for acceptance, leaving behind a legacy that challenges not only Hollywood's past, but its present assumptions about who is allowed to speak and survive on their own terms. Lola Falana. Lola Falana rose to prominence in the late 1960s and 1970s as a symbol of confidence, movement, and unapologetic glamour. To the public, she appeared effortlessly radiant, an accomplished dancer with a striking figure, magnetic smile, and stage presence that translated seamlessly from television to film. Her breakout performances on variety shows and in Las Vegas revues positioned her as a new kind of star, athletic, sensual, and visibly in control of her image. Falana's success was not built on mystery or restraint. It was rooted in vitality, precision, and an ease with her own body that audiences immediately recognized. Yet that same visibility created a narrow box that proved difficult to escape. Hollywood often treated Falana's curves and physicality as the headline, while her discipline as a performer was treated as secondary. Although she appeared in films and high-profile television specials, she was rarely offered roles that expanded beyond the persona audiences already associated with her. The industry welcomed her as a spectacle, but hesitated to invest in her long-term development as a dramatic actress. A dramatic turning point arrived in the 1980s when Falana faced serious health challenges, including a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. At a time when visibility was tied to constant performance, her illness forced an abrupt pause. She withdrew from the spotlight, redirecting her focus toward recovery, spirituality, and private life. Unlike many stars whose careers faded quietly, Falana's absence itself became part of her story, a reminder of how fragile fame can be when it is built on physical endurance rather than institutional support. The impact of Lola Falana's career lies in what she represented during a transitional era. She embodied a form of Black femininity that was energetic, self-assured, and openly celebrated by audiences even as Hollywood struggled to define how to support it. Her legacy is not one of missed potential, but of cultural presence, proof that charisma and confidence can reshape public perception even when the system is unprepared to follow through. Falana remains a figure remembered not just for how she looked on stage, but for how fully she owned it. Tamara Dobson. Tamara Dobson entered the public eye in the early 1970s with a presence that immediately disrupted Hollywood's expectations. Standing around 6 feet tall with a statuesque athletic build and a noticeably full bust, she projected authority rather than delicacy. Her breakthrough came as the lead in Cleopatra Jones' 1973, where she was presented not as a side character or love interest, but as a commanding central figure. To audiences, Dobson represented a new image of success, elegant, physically imposing, and unmistakably powerful at a time when few Black actresses were allowed to occupy that space on screen. That same physical presence, however, became a source of tension within the industry. Hollywood was unsure how to place a woman who combined glamour with height, strength, and confidence. Dobson's body did not fit the submissive or ornamental roles typically written for women, particularly Black women. While her figure was admired, it was also treated as intimidating rather than marketable in mainstream cinema. She was celebrated within the blaxploitation genre, but rarely offered opportunities beyond it. Was her strength the very quality that limited how far the industry would allow her to go? As the blaxploitation era faded, Dobson's acting opportunities narrowed. Instead of being guided into varied dramatic roles, she found herself navigating a shrinking field of options. Rather than chasing diminishing film offers, she made a deliberate pivot away from Hollywood. Dobson pursued higher education, earning a degree, and later a master's in business administration, choosing stability and self-determination over an industry that had never fully committed to her growth. The lasting impact of Tamara Dobson's career lies in symbolism as much as screen time. She challenged the visual hierarchy of Hollywood by embodying power, intellect, and physical confidence in one frame. Her legacy is not defined by quantity of roles, but by the boundaries she exposed, showing how narrow Hollywood's imagination could be when confronted with a woman who refused to shrink herself. Today, Dobson is remembered as a figure who briefly expanded what was possible on screen, leaving behind a quiet but enduring question about how many others were limited not by talent, but by the industry's fear of their presence. Juanita Moore. Juanita Moore built her public image during an era when Hollywood rarely allowed Black women to be seen as complex or desirable on their own terms. In the 1950s, she was admired for her refined beauty, graceful figure, and calm authority on screen. Her most recognized success came with Imitation of Life, 1959, where her performance earned her an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress, a rare acknowledgement for a Black actress at the time. To audiences, Moore appeared poised and dignified, embodying a form of elegance that quietly challenged Hollywood's narrow stereotypes. Yet beneath that recognition lay a career constrained by systemic limits. Moore's physical presence and maturity made her visible but not promotable in the way studios marketed white actresses. While her figure fit the era's standards of femininity, it was never framed as aspirational or glamorous. Instead, she was repeatedly cast in maternal or domestic roles, reinforcing a ceiling she could not break through. The industry praised her talent while denying her range, offering admiration without advancement. As the studio system shifted in the 1960s, Moore found herself facing fewer meaningful roles. Younger actresses entered an industry still unwilling to reimagine Black women beyond familiar boundaries. Rather than fade quietly, Moore chose longevity on her own terms, continuing to work steadily in film and television while advocating for greater representation. She spoke candidly about the limited roles available to her generation, emphasizing that talent alone was never enough to overcome structural exclusion. Juanita Moore's legacy rests in endurance and truth. She exposed a contradiction at the heart of classic Hollywood, the ability to acknowledge Black excellence while refusing to expand space for it. Her career stands as a reminder that being celebrated is not the same as being empowered. Today, Moore is remembered not only for her performances, but for the quiet resistance embodied in her persistence, an artist who remained visible in a system designed to overlook her, and whose story continues to inform conversations about access, dignity, and recognition in American cinema. Diahann Carroll. Diahann Carroll entered Hollywood with an image that projected refinement, intelligence, and effortless elegance. From the beginning, she was presented not merely as a performer, but as a symbol of upward mobility at a time when such images were rarely afforded to Black women. Her early success in film and music, followed by her groundbreaking role in Julia 1968, made her the first Black woman to star in a U.S. television series not centered on servitude. To the public, Carroll represented progress, stylish, articulate, and visibly glamorous, with a figure that fit the classic Hollywood ideal without apology. Yet that carefully polished image also became a source of conflict. Carroll was often criticized for being too perfect or too elite, accusations that revealed discomfort rather than reality. While white actresses with similar physical appeal were openly marketed as sex symbols, Carroll's beauty and curves were handled cautiously, framed as respectable but never overtly celebrated. Hollywood wanted her elegance without the sensual freedom routinely granted to others. She later spoke openly about the pressure to maintain a flawless appearance, knowing that even minor missteps would be magnified. Why was her beauty required to reassure rather than simply exist? The long-term consequences of that positioning were complex. Carroll achieved milestones that reshaped television and film, yet she often found herself isolated, praised publicly, while privately navigating limited creative control. As she aged, roles diminished, and she was forced to reinvent herself repeatedly in theater, television, movies, and later dramatic guest roles. Unlike many contemporaries, she confronted these shifts with candor, acknowledging the emotional cost of being both a symbol and an exception. Diahann Carroll's legacy extends beyond her historic firsts. She demonstrated that visibility alone does not equal freedom, and that progress can still come with conditions. Her career revealed how Hollywood managed Black beauty by placing it behind layers of acceptability and restraint. Today, she is remembered as a woman who expanded the frame of what was possible, even while carrying the weight of representing an entire generation. Carroll's life invites reflection on how far the industry has come and how often it still asks certain women to be flawless just to be allowed inside the room. Lonette McKee. Lonette McKee emerged in the early 1970s with a public image that felt both modern and understated. She was visibly beautiful, naturally curvaceous, and carried herself with a quiet confidence that contrasted sharply with the louder archetypes of the era. Her most recognizable role came as Sister Williams in Sparkle 1976, where her warmth and sensual ease stood out without spectacle. To audiences, McKee represented a softer kind of success, someone whose appeal came from presence and authenticity rather than aggressive marketing. That subtlety, however, became a challenge within an industry driven by extremes. Hollywood struggled to position McKee in a system that demanded clear labels, either the hypersexualized figure or the safely desexualized supporting role. She did not fit comfortably into either box. While her figure aligned with conventional standards of attractiveness, studios hesitated to promote her as a sex symbol, often redirecting her into nurturing or secondary characters. Opportunities appeared, but rarely with momentum or long-term investment. As the 1980s progressed, McKee's visibility declined despite her continued talent. She worked steadily in television and film, but without the spotlight afforded to less nuanced performers. Rather than chase an image that felt imposed, she maintained a selective presence, choosing roles that aligned with her sense of self. Unlike many of her peers, she avoided public controversy, tabloid narratives, or forced reinvention even when that restraint came at the cost of industry attention. Lonette McKee's legacy lies in restraint and integrity. She represents a generation of performers whose beauty was undeniable but deliberately managed within narrow expectations. Her career highlights a quieter truth about Hollywood, that not all limitations are loud and not all exclusions are obvious. Today, McKee is remembered as an actress who moved through the system without surrendering her identity, leaving behind a body of work that invites reflection on how many careers are shaped not by failure, but by an industry's inability to imagine complexity. Theresa Randle. Theresa Randle entered Hollywood in the early 1990s with a public image that felt grounded, confident, and unmistakably mature. She was not introduced as a starlet engineered by hype, but as a woman whose beauty and physical presence felt natural and lived in. Audiences took notice through films like Malcolm X, 1992, Bad Boys, 1995, and Beverly Hills Cop 3, 1994, where her curvaceous figure and calm authority stood in contrast to the era's rising preference for hyper-stylized or ultra-thin actresses. Randle's success was built on credibility. She looked like someone who belonged on screen without needing explanation. Despite that visibility, her career revealed a deeper tension. Hollywood appeared comfortable casting Randle as the grounded partner, the supportive presence, or the woman who stabilized male leads, but rarely as the center of desire or narrative momentum. Her body aligned with classic standards of femininity, yet it was treated as incidental rather than marketable. Unlike actresses whose curves were overtly emphasized or commodified, Randle's physicality was quietly acknowledged and then strategically ignored. As the late 1990s and early 2000s approached, Randle's roles became increasingly sporadic. She continued to work, but without the sustained backing that transforms consistent performers into long-term stars. The industry shifted toward younger faces and more extreme visual archetypes, leaving little space for actresses whose appeal was rooted in balance and realism. Rather than reinvent herself through spectacle or controversy, Randle maintained a low profile, stepping back as Hollywood's priorities moved away from performers like her. The impact of Theresa Randle's career lies in what it quietly exposes. She represents a category of actresses who met every professional standard: talent, presence, beauty, yet were never fully invested in by the system. Her legacy is not one of scandal or collapse, but of omission. Randle's story reminds us that Hollywood's exclusions are not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes they appear as a slow withdrawal of opportunity. In remembering her work, audiences are left to consider how many careers were shaped not by lack of ability, but by an industry's narrow imagination of who gets to remain visible. Vanessa Williams. Vanessa Williams entered the public eye in the early 1980s with a level of visibility few performers ever experience. Crowned Miss America in 1984, she was presented as polished, intelligent, and undeniably glamorous. Her tall, statuesque frame and full, elegant figure fit classic standards of beauty, while her poise suggested a new chapter in mainstream representation. To many Americans, Williams symbolized achievement, someone who had reached the center of national attention with grace and composure, seemingly positioned for a long, institutionally supported career. That image fractured almost immediately. Following the unauthorized publication of nude photographs taken years earlier, Williams faced intense backlash that culminated in her resignation as Miss America. The controversy was swift and unforgiving, transforming admiration into moral judgment overnight. While similar scandals had been survived by others, Williams encountered a harsher standard, one that linked her body to punishment rather than complexity. The incident became a defining turning point, forcing her to rebuild her career from outside the structures that had first elevated her. The aftermath revealed Williams's resilience. She redirected her focus toward music and acting, achieving commercial success with albums like The Comfort Zone and later earning critical recognition on stage and screen. Her work in film, television, and Broadway demonstrated range and discipline, gradually shifting public perception from controversy to credibility. Yet even as she accumulated awards and accolades, the early narrative lingered, shaping how her confidence and physical presence were interpreted. Her beauty was acknowledged, but now filtered through caution rather than celebration. Vanessa Williams's legacy is defined by reclamation. She transformed a career-threatening rupture into a sustained, multifaceted body of work, proving that talent could outlast institutional rejection. Her story exposes how quickly admiration can turn conditional when power over image changes hands. Today, Williams is remembered not as a footnote of scandal, but as an artist who rebuilt on her own terms, leaving behind a legacy that challenges how success, beauty, and forgiveness are unevenly distributed in American entertainment culture. Lynn Whitfield. Lynn Whitfield entered Hollywood with an image that combined classical beauty, controlled sensuality, and unmistakable intelligence. From her early appearances in film and television during the late 1970s and 1980s, she carried herself with a regal poise that set her apart from trend-driven starlets. Her curvaceous figure fit traditional Hollywood ideals, yet it was never exaggerated for spectacle. Instead, Whitfield's success rested on refinement and authority qualities that culminated in her acclaimed performance as Josephine Baker in The Josephine Baker Story, 1991, which earned her an Emmy Award and reintroduced her to a wider audience as a serious leading woman. That recognition, however, did not translate into consistent opportunity. Despite her proven range and physical presence, Whitfield often found herself navigating an industry unsure of how to position her. She was too glamorous for roles written around hardship stereotypes, yet not promoted as a mainstream romantic lead. Hollywood admired her elegance, but rarely built narratives around it. The industry's discomfort lay not in her talent, but in her refusal to conform to extremes. She was neither invisible nor exaggerated, existing in a space the system had not fully imagined. As the years progressed, Whitfield continued working steadily, often in supporting roles that underused her depth. She appeared in high-profile films and television projects, delivering consistent performances without the institutional momentum granted to others with less proven ability. Rather than chasing constant reinvention, she focused on craft, allowing her work to speak quietly while the industry moved toward younger faces and louder personas. This steadiness, while admirable, came at the cost of prolonged spotlight. Lynn Whitfield's impact lies in her persistence and restraint. She represents a generation of actresses whose beauty was evident but carefully managed, whose talent was recognized but not fully invested in. Her legacy is not defined by excess visibility, but by longevity and dignity. Whitfield's career invites reflection on how Hollywood measures success not only by awards or fame, but by who is repeatedly given the chance to lead. In remembering her work, audiences are reminded that true presence does not always demand attention, yet it leaves an enduring mark all the same. Halle Berry. Halle Berry entered Hollywood in the early 1990s with an image that balanced classical beauty and modern athleticism. She was visibly glamorous with a toned, curvaceous figure that aligned with long-standing Hollywood ideals, yet she carried herself with a seriousness that suggested ambition beyond surface appeal. Early roles in films like Boomerang 1992 positioned her as desirable and confident, helping her achieve mainstream visibility. To audiences, Berry appeared to be one of the few black actresses granted access to roles traditionally reserved for leading women, signaling a moment of progress within a historically restrictive system. That access, however, came with clear conditions. Berry quickly discovered that opportunity often arrived packaged with expectation, particularly around how her body and sexuality were framed on screen. While her physical presence helped open doors, it also narrowed perception, pushing her toward roles that emphasized vulnerability or eroticism over interior complexity. She accepted challenging parts others avoided, aware that visibility carried risk. The turning point came with Monsters Ball 2001, a performance that earned her an Academy Award and placed her firmly in history. The aftermath of that milestone revealed a paradox. Although Berry became the first Black woman to win Best Actress, the industry struggled to translate that achievement into sustained, empowering roles. Projects varied wildly in quality and public scrutiny intensified. Her body remained central to discussion, often overshadowing her craft while box office pressures and cultural expectations collided. Berry spoke openly about the difficulty of finding meaningful work that matched her skill level, highlighting how singular success does not automatically dismantle structural barriers. Halle Berry's legacy is layered and unresolved, much like the industry she navigated. She stands as proof that representation can break ceilings while leaving the room largely unchanged. Her career illustrates both progress and limitation, how beauty and bravery can open doors, yet still demand personal cost. Today, Berry is remembered not only for historic achievement, but for enduring in a system that often celebrates exceptions more comfortably than transformation. Her story continues to invite reflection on what true equality in Hollywood would actually look like long after the applause fades. Nia Long. Nia Long rose to prominence in the 1990s with a public image defined by ease rather than excess. She was instantly recognizable, warm, grounded, and naturally attractive, with a curvaceous figure that felt relatable instead of manufactured. Breakout roles in Boys and the Hood, 1991 and Friday 1995, followed by romantic leads in Love Jones 1997 and The Best Man 1999, positioned her as a central figure in Black cinema. To audiences, Long represented success without spectacle, a woman whose beauty complemented her presence rather than announcing itself. That very naturalism became a quiet source of conflict. Hollywood often celebrates extremes, and Long resisted them. She was neither hyper-stylized nor aggressively sexualized, which made it difficult for studios to brand her within a system that prefers easy labels. Despite consistent popularity, she was rarely framed as a mainstream sex symbol, even as her roles clearly acknowledged desirability. Opportunities arrived, but they tended to cluster within ensemble casts or culturally specific projects, limiting crossover momentum. As trends shifted in the 2000s, Long continued working steadily, choosing roles that emphasized emotional realism and maturity. She transitioned seamlessly into television, earning renewed visibility on series like The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air earlier in her career and later Empire. Rather than chase reinvention through shock or controversy, she leaned into longevity, accepting that Hollywood's attention can be fleeting, but a consistent relationship with audiences can endure. Her career reflects calculated patience in an industry often driven by short-term returns. The impact of Nia Long's career lies in her refusal to distort herself to fit changing fashions. She demonstrated that beauty does not need exaggeration to remain compelling, and that presence can outlast hype. Her legacy challenges a persistent assumption in Hollywood that relevance requires reinvention at any cost. Instead, Long offers a quieter model of success, sustained, authentic, and anchored in trust with the audience. In a system that often rewards noise, her story stands as proof that consistency can be its own form of power. Meagan Good. Meagan Good entered the public eye at a young age and matured on screen in front of audiences who watched her grow from child roles into a confident adult performer. By the early 2000s, her image was unmistakable, athletic, curvaceous, and self-assured, with a contemporary glamour that aligned naturally with music videos, romantic dramas, and studio films alike. Roles in projects such as Eve's Bayou, Deliver Us from Eva, and Think Like a Man positioned her as a modern leading woman whose appeal blended physical confidence with emotional accessibility. To many viewers, Good represented a new generation of success that felt current, stylish, and culturally fluent. That visibility, however, carried an immediate tension. Hollywood often framed Good's body as the headline, while her craft became secondary in the conversation. She was frequently cast in roles that leaned heavily on desirability, limiting the range of characters she was offered as her career progressed. Public commentary focused intensely on her appearance, placing her in a narrow corridor between admiration and judgment. At times, expectations about image, how she dressed, spoke, or presented herself overshadowed discussion of performance. A notable turning point came as Good publicly reassessed how she wanted to be seen and the types of roles she wanted to accept. She became more selective, stepping back from projects that reinforced one-dimensional portrayals. This period coincided with shifts in her personal life and faith, which she discussed openly, understanding that any change would be scrutinized. The result was not a disappearance, but a recalibration, choosing longevity and self-definition over constant exposure in an industry that rewards visibility at any cost. Meagan Good's legacy is still unfolding, but its contours are already clear. She illustrates how modern fame can amplify opportunity while simultaneously narrowing perception. Her career reflects the challenge of navigating Hollywood as a woman whose body is discussed as readily as her talent. Rather than being defined by that imbalance, Good's story emphasizes agency, the decision to pause, redirect, and evolve. In doing so, she offers a contemporary lens on an old industry question whether true success lies in remaining visible or in retaining control over how that visibility is earned and sustained. Angela Bassett. Angela Bassett entered Hollywood with an image rooted in strength, discipline, and unmistakable authority. From the start, she carried herself differently. Upright posture, commanding voice, and a sculpted athletic figure that communicated power rather than fragility. Early performances in films such as Boys in the Hood, 1991, and What's Love Got to Do with It, 1993, established her as a serious dramatic force. Her portrayal of Tina Turner, which required intense physical transformation and emotional range, brought critical acclaim and mainstream recognition. To the public, Bassett represented success earned through preparation, not spectacle. Yet her career unfolded against a quiet contradiction. While her body fit classical ideals of strength and femininity, Hollywood struggled to reconcile that with its limited imagination for Black women. Bassett was rarely marketed as a sex symbol, even when her physical presence was undeniable. Instead, she was positioned as formidable, respectable, and emotionally resilient, qualities praised but carefully contained. Leading romantic roles were scarce, and opportunities often arrived only when tied to historical figures or moral gravity. The long-term effects of this positioning became evident as trends shifted. Bassett continued to deliver consistent high-level performances, yet the industry's recognition lagged behind her influence. She transitioned fluidly between film, television, and stage, earning awards and respect without the cyclical hype afforded to others. Rather than conforming to youth-driven expectations, she leaned into longevity, maintaining physical discipline and artistic rigor well into her later career. Her continued prominence on television in the 2010s and beyond reaffirmed her relevance without requiring reinvention or compromise. Angela Bassett's legacy is one of endurance and recalibration. She expanded the definition of what a leading woman could look like: strong without apology, elegant without fragility, visible without surrendering control. Her career exposes how Hollywood often separates beauty from authority, allowing one but resisting both in the same figure. Today, Bassett stands as a benchmark rather than an exception, a reminder that true impact is measured not by trends survived, but by standards reset. Her story invites reflection on how power, presence, and longevity can coexist, even in an industry slow to imagine them together. At Legends of Black Excellence, these stories are not about rankings or measurements. They are about legacy. Each woman we discussed challenged an industry that profited from Black beauty while hesitating to fully honor Black authority, range, and longevity. Their careers expose a larger truth: progress in Hollywood has often come with conditions, not freedom. Some doors opened, but many remained carefully guarded. If these women had been supported rather than managed, how different would film history look today? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation doesn't end here, and the real debate remains open: is Black excellence finally being celebrated on its own terms or still filtered through rules that never truly disappeared.